Dr. Eleanor Price finds the photograph on a Tuesday morning in October, buried in a crate labeled miscellaneous, pre-1910. The glass plate negative is wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, brittle as moth wings. She holds it up to the light streaming through the archive window of Greenwood Chapel, and the faces emerge, pale, solemn, arranged in a formal row before two marble headstones. 7 people. Her breath catches. The catalogue card taped to the crate reads, Plate Box 47B, Whitfield Family, Greenwood Cemetery, Edwin L. Carr Portraits, Brooklyn, Autumn, 1903. 6 subjects. But Eleanor counts 7. She sets the plate on the light box and leans closer. The family stands rigid in their mourning clothes, black wool, high collars, expressions blank as stone. The patriarch, Jonathan Whitfield, holds his wife Eleanor's hand. Their children fan out beside them. 4 boys in dark suits, 2 girls in pale dresses with braided hair. Behind the 3rd child from the right, a girl no older than 8, another face emerges, translucent, smiling, half hidden behind the base of a funeral obelisk. Eleanor's hand trembles. The face is sharp, clear. A child with loose curls and bright eyes staring directly at the camera. Not blurred, not accidental, not a shadow. She flips the plate over. On the back, written in faded ink, I swear I saw 7 when I took the picture, but the father said there should be only 6. The handwriting is tight, deliberate. The signature reads E.L. Carr, November 12, 1903. Eleanor's pulse quickens. She's been restoring Greenwood's photographic archive for 3 years, digitizing thousands of glass negatives from Brooklyn's golden age of memorial photography, but she's never seen anything like this. She scans the plate at high resolution, adjusting the color balance and sharpening the contrast. The image appears on her screen in brutal clarity. The extra child, positioned slightly behind the others, wears a white dress with lace trim. Her hair is lighter than the other children's. Her smile is wide, almost mischievous. While every other face in the photograph is grave, hers is radiant. Eleanor zooms in on the emulsion. The silver particles in that section of the plate are irregular, clumped in patterns inconsistent with the rest of the image. It's as if the exposure time had been different, as if someone had opened the shutter twice, a double exposure. That's the rational explanation. In the early 1900s, photographers often accidentally exposed the same plate twice, creating ghostly overlapping images. It was common, unremarkable, but this doesn't look like an accident. Eleanor pulls up Greenwood's burial records from 1903. She types in Whitfield. Dozens of entries appear. She scrolls through birth dates, death dates, plot numbers, then she stops. Clara Mae Whitfield, born March 3, 1895, died June 14, 1903. Cause diphtheria, 8 years old. Eleanor's stomach tightens. She cross-references the plot number, Section 17, Lot 432, the same section visible in the photograph. She searches for Clara's death certificate in the city registry. Nothing. She searches the burial ledger. No entry. She pulls up the cemetery's original hand-drawn maps from 1903 and traces her finger along Section 17. Lot 432 shows 6 marked graves, Jonathan, Eleanor, and 4 of their sons, all buried decades later. One grave remains unlabeled, just a blank space next to the obelisk. No name, no inscription, no record. Eleanor sits back in her chair, her mind racing. If Clara died in June 1903, why was the family photographed at her grave 4 months later with no death certificate, no burial record, and no marker? And why does the girl in the photograph, smiling, luminous, impossible, look exactly like the portrait of Clara Mae Whitfield hanging in the chapel's memorial gallery? She prints the photograph and pins it to the corkboard above her desk. Then she opens her laptop and begins searching for surviving Whitfield descendants. If Clara died in 1903, someone in the family must remember. Someone must know why she was erased. But as Eleanor scrolls through genealogy records, census data, and obituaries, a darker pattern emerges. None of the Whitfield children ever mentioned Clara in their later lives. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not even in private letters archived at the Brooklyn Historical Society. It's as if Clara Mae Whitfield never existed. Eleanor's phone buzzes. A text from her colleague, Marcus Chen, the cemetery's historian. Found something. Meet me at lot 432. Bring a shovel. She grabs her coat and heads out into the cold October wind. The cemetery sprawls across 478 acres of rolling hills and Gothic monuments, the highest point in Brooklyn. The trees are aflame with autumn, red maples, golden oaks, their leaves swirling in the breeze. Tourists wander the paths, cameras in hand, captivated by the Victorian sculptures and mausoleums. Greenwood has always been a place for the living as much as the dead. Eleanor finds Marcus kneeling beside the Whitfield obelisk, a weathered granite column rising 12 feet into the air. The names of Jonathan and Eleanor are carved deep into the stone, along with their 4 sons. But at the base, where a 7th name should be, there's only smooth, unmarked granite. Marcus looks up, his face pale. I found this. He holds up a rusted metal box, no bigger than a shoebox, caked in dirt. Eleanor kneels beside him. Where? Buried 6 inches down. Right here. He points to the unmarked grave. Eleanor's heart pounds. She pulls on a pair of latex gloves and opens the box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, is a bundle of letters tied with black ribbon. Beneath them, a small leather journal. She unfolds the first letter. The handwriting is shaky, desperate. My dearest Clara, I do not know if you will ever read this, but I must believe that somewhere you still exist. Eleanor's breath catches. The letter is dated November 15th, 1903, 3 days after the photograph was taken. She reads aloud. Your father insists you are gone. The doctors say you are gone, but I saw you, Clara. I saw you in the photograph Mr. Carr took. You were smiling. You were there. Marcus leans closer. Who wrote it? Eleanor flips to the signature. Your mother, Eleanor Whitfield. The wind picks up, scattering leaves across the grave. Eleanor looks down at the unmarked stone, then back at the letter in her hands. She saw her daughter in the photograph, Eleanor whispers, and she believed it was real. Marcus frowns. But it was just a double exposure, right? A mistake. Eleanor doesn't answer. She opens the journal and flips to the last entry, dated December 1st, 1903. They took Clara from me twice. First they sent her away. Then they told me she was dead. But I know the truth. I know she is still out there somewhere waiting for me to find her. Eleanor's hands go numb. She looks up at Marcus, her voice barely audible. They didn't bury her here. What? Clara wasn't buried in this grave. She wasn't buried anywhere. Marcus stares at her. Then where is she? Eleanor stands, clutching the journal to her chest. Her gaze drifts across the sprawling cemetery, the endless rows of headstones, the secrets buried beneath centuries of stone and soil. I don't know, she says, but I'm going to find out. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Eleanor spends the next 3 days in the basement archives of the Brooklyn Historical Society, buried in microfilm and crumbling ledgers. Marcus brings her coffee at noon and sandwiches at 5. She barely notices. The Whitfield family has become an obsession. She starts with the 1900 census. Jonathan Whitfield, age 42, textile merchant. Eleanor Whitfield, age 38, homemaker. 6 children. Thomas, Henry, William, Charles, Margaret, and Clara Mae, all living at 342 Prospect Avenue, Brooklyn. Clara is listed as 5 years old. Eleanor moves forward to the 1910 census. Jonathan, Eleanor, and 5 children. Thomas, Henry, William, Charles, and Margaret. No Clara. She searches death records again. Nothing. She searches hospital admissions. Nothing. She searches immigration records, thinking maybe Clara was sent abroad. Nothing. Clara Mae Whitfield simply vanishes between 1900 and 1910. Eleanor leans back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. The archive room is cold, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Outside, rain drums against the windows. She opens Eleanor Whitfield's journal again, reading the entries more carefully this time. June 15th, 1903. Clara has been ill for 3 days. The doctor came this morning and confirmed what we feared. Diphtheria. Jonathan is beside himself. He insists we take her to the hospital immediately, but I cannot bear to let her go. She is so small, so fragile. What if she doesn't come home? June 18, 1903. Clara's fever has worsened. Dr. Harrison administered the antitoxin, but she is not improving. Jonathan has arranged for her to be transferred to Willard Parker Hospital. I begged him to let her stay, but he says the hospital has better equipment, better doctors. I pray he is right. June 22, 1903. We received a telegram today. Clara's condition is critical. Jonathan and I took the ferry across the East River, but when we arrived, they would not let us see her. They said she was in quarantine. I stood outside the window and watched her through the glass. She looked so pale, so still. I pressed my hand against the window, and for a moment, I thought she saw me. But then the nurse pulled the curtain closed. June 24, 1903. Dr. Harrison came to the house this morning. He said Clara passed away during the night. Peacefully, he said. Without pain. But how can he know? How can he be sure? I asked to see her body, to hold her one last time, but he said it was not permitted. Diphtheria is highly contagious, he explained. The body must be handled with care. Jonathan accepted this. But I cannot. I will not. Eleanor's throat tightens. She flips forward, looking for more entries, but the next few pages are torn out. Jagged edges remain where someone ripped the paper from the binding. She turns to the next intact entry, dated August 3rd, 1903. August 3rd, 1903. I went to Willard Parker Hospital today. I demanded to see the records of Clara's admission, her treatment, her death. The head nurse, a stern woman named Mrs. Caldwell, told me no such records exist. She said no child named Clara Whitfield was ever admitted. I showed her the telegram. I showed her Dr. Harrison's letter. She looked at me as if I were mad. "Madam," she said, "there is no death certificate, no burial record, no Clara Whitfield." I left the hospital in tears. Jonathan says I am imagining things, that grief has clouded my mind, but I know what I saw. I know my daughter existed. Eleanor stares at the page, her heart pounding. She grabs her laptop and searches for Willard Parker Hospital. It was a contagious disease hospital on the East River, opened in 1885 specifically to treat diphtheria, scarlet fever, and other infectious illnesses. It operated until the 1950s, when it was demolished. She searches for patient records. Most were destroyed, but some were transferred to the New York City Municipal Archives. Eleanor makes a note. She'll need to visit the archives in person. She returns to the journal. September 10, 1903. I hired a private investigator, Mr. Albert Finch. He has agreed to look into Clara's disappearance. Jonathan is furious. He says I am wasting our money, that I need to accept the truth and move on. But I cannot move on. Not until I know what really happened. October 8, 1903. Mr. Finch came to the house today with disturbing news. He spoke to several nurses at Willard Parker, and one of them, a young woman named Miss Langley, admitted that some children who arrived at the hospital were not treated there. She said that when the hospital was overcrowded, or when a child's condition was deemed hopeless, they were transferred to another facility. She did not know where. When I pressed her for more information, she became frightened and refused to say anything else. Mr. Finch believes she was threatened. He says he will continue investigating, but it will take time. November 15, 1903. The photograph. Mr. Carr took the photograph today at the cemetery. Jonathan insisted we have a family portrait made at the gravesite to honor Clara's memory, but when Mr. Carr developed the plate, something impossible appeared. Clara. She was there, in the photograph, standing behind Margaret, smiling. I saw it with my own eyes. Mr. Carr was shaken. He said he counted 6 people when he took the picture, but the plate shows 7. Jonathan refused to look at it. He called it a mistake, a trick of the light, but I know better. Clara is trying to tell me something. She is trying to show me that she is still alive. Eleanor's hands are shaking. She flips to the final entry. December 1st, 1903. Mr. Finch has disappeared. His office is closed. His landlady says he left without notice. I went to the police, but they were not interested. They said he probably moved to another city, that private investigators come and go all the time. But I know something happened to him. He was getting too close to the truth, Jonathan has forbidden me from pursuing this any further. He says I am damaging the family's reputation, that people are starting to talk. But I don't care what people think. I know Clara is out there somewhere waiting for me to find her, and I will, even if it takes the rest of my life. Eleanor closes the journal and sits in silence. The rain has stopped. The archive room is dark, except for the glow of her laptop screen. Marcus appears in the doorway, his coat dripping. "You still here?" Eleanor looks up. "Clara didn't die of diphtheria." Marcus steps closer. "What?" "She was taken somewhere, transferred. Her mother tried to find her, but someone stopped her. Someone erased Clara from every record, every document. Someone made her disappear." Marcus frowns. "Why would anyone do that?" Eleanor stands, gathering the journal and letters. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." She pulls on her coat and heads for the door, Marcus following close behind. Outside, the streets of Brooklyn are slick with rain, the lights of the city reflected in the puddles. Eleanor hails a cab and gives the driver an address. "Where are we going?" Marcus asks. "The municipal archives," Eleanor says. "If Clara was transferred from Willard Parker, there has to be a record. Hospital transfers, patient logs, something?" The cab pulls away from the curb, weaving through traffic. Marcus glances at Eleanor, her face illuminated by the passing streetlights. "What if we don't find anything?" Eleanor's jaw tightens. "Then we keep looking." The municipal archives are closed when they arrive, but Eleanor has a contact, a senior archivist named Dr. Judith Klein, who has helped her with research before. She calls Judith's cell. After 3 rings, Judith answers. "Eleanor, it's almost 8 o'clock. I need a favor," Eleanor says. "It's important." 20 minutes later, Judith meets them at the side entrance. She's a small woman in her 60s, grey hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a thick wool sweater. She unlocks the door and leads them through the dimly lit corridors to the medical records vault. "What are you looking for?" Judith asks, pulling out a ring of keys. "Patient transfers from Willard Parker Hospital, summer of 1903, Eleanor says. Judith raises an eyebrow. "That's oddly specific." "I'm working on a case." Judith unlocks the vault and flips on the lights. The room is lined with metal shelves, each packed with cardboard boxes and leather-bound ledgers. She scans the labels, then pulls down a heavy volume. Willard Parker, 1903. Admissions and Discharges. Eleanor takes the ledger and sets it on the table. She flips through the pages, running her finger down the columns. June 14th, June 15th, June 16th. She stops. June 18th, 1903. Clara Mae Whitfield, age 8, admitted, diphtheria. Her heart races. She keeps reading. June 22nd, 1903. Transfer authorized. Destination, Randall's Island Asylum for Chronic Dependents. Eleanor's blood runs cold. Marcus leans over her shoulder. Randall's Island? That was a mental asylum. Eleanor nods slowly. And a facility for children with incurable diseases. Children no one wanted to treat. Children society wanted to forget. Judith crosses her arms. If she was sent there, she wouldn't have been listed as dead. She would have been listed as institutionalized, indefinitely. Eleanor closes the ledger, her voice barely a whisper. Clara didn't die, she was abandoned. The ferry to Randall's Island leaves from East 125th Street at dawn. Eleanor and Marcus stand at the railing, watching the dark water churn beneath them. The wind is sharp, cutting through their coats. The island rises from the river like a scar, low, barren, its skeletal buildings silhouetted against the grey sky. Eleanor hasn't slept. She spent the entire night reading about Randall's Island, its history, its purpose, its horrors. The island was a dumping ground for people society wanted to forget. Orphans, delinquents, the mentally ill, the chronically sick. Children deemed incurable or defective were sent there to die out of sight. The Randall's Island Hospital and School for Chronic Dependents opened in 1892, merging several institutions into one sprawling complex. By 1903, it housed over 2,000 children, many of them suffering from tuberculosis, polio, or developmental disabilities. Conditions were brutal. Overcrowding, disease, abuse. Infant mortality rates were staggering. Records were poorly kept, if at all. Many children who died on the island were buried in unmarked graves in the potter's field. Clara Mae Whitfield was 8 years old when she was sent there. Eleanor grips the railing, her knuckles white. "She was sent to die," she whispers. Marcus stands beside her, silent. He doesn't know what to say. The ferry docks at the island's southern tip. They step onto the cracked concrete pier, the wind whipping their hair. The island is mostly parkland now, athletic fields, tennis courts, a concert venue. But traces of its dark past remain. Crumbling brick buildings, rusted fences, overgrown foundations hidden beneath the grass. Eleanor pulls out a map she printed from the city archives. It shows the layout of the island in 1903. The main hospital complex was located on the northern end, near the current Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. She and Marcus follow the old road, now a bike path toward the ruins. They reach the site 20 minutes later. The buildings are gone. Demolished decades ago, but the foundations remain, long rectangular outlines of stone and cement, half buried in the earth. Eleanor kneels beside one of them, running her hand over the rough surface. This was where children like Clara lived, suffered, and died. "What are we looking for?" Marcus asks. "Records," Eleanor says. "Patient logs, death certificates, anything that proves Clara was here." They search the area for over an hour, but there's nothing, just rubble and weeds. Eleanor sits on a broken wall, frustration boiling inside her. The records were destroyed, or buried, or lost. Marcus sits beside her. There has to be another way. Eleanor pulls out Eleanor Whitfield's journal and flips through the pages again. She stops at an entry dated November 20th, 1903. November 20th, 1903. "I went to Randall's Island today. It took me 3 hours to reach the island, and when I arrived, the guards would not let me enter. I told them I was looking for my daughter, Clara Mae Whitfield, age 8, transferred from Willard Parker Hospital in June. The guard, a large, cold man, said there were no visitors allowed. I begged him. I showed him Clara's photograph. He looked at me with contempt and said, 'Lady, there are 2,000 kids on this island. You think we keep track of all of them?' I tried to push past him, but he grabbed my arm and shoved me back. 'If your kid's here,' he said, 'she's as good as dead. Go home.'" Eleanor's throat tightens. She closes the journal and looks out at the river. The wind carries the faint sound of traffic from the bridge overhead. "She tried to find her," Eleanor says softly. "She came here. She tried." Marcus is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "There's a historical society on Roosevelt Island. They have archives from the old asylums. Blackwell's, Ward's Island, Randall's, maybe they have something." Eleanor stands, hope flickering in her chest. "Let's go." They take the tram to Roosevelt Island, a thin sliver of land between Manhattan and Queens. The Historical Society is housed in a small building near the ruins of the old smallpox hospital. The director, an elderly man named Mr. Leonard Hastings, greets them at the door. "We're looking for records from Randall's Island," Eleanor says. "Specifically, a child named Clara Mae Whitfield, transferred there in 1903. Leonard nods slowly. "Come with me." He leads them down a narrow staircase to the basement. The room is cold, damp, and lined with filing cabinets. Leonard pulls open one of the drawers and retrieves a large, leather-bound ledger. He sets it on the table and opens it. "This is the admission log from the Randall's Island Hospital and School for Chronic Dependents, 1902 to 1905, he says. "It's incomplete, but it's all we have." Eleanor's hands tremble as she turns the pages. June 1903, July, August. She stops. August 12, 1903. Clara Mae Whitfield, age 8. Transferred from Willard Parker Hospital. Condition, diphtheria recovery. Complications, neurological damage, prognosis, chronic care. Eleanor's vision blurs. She reads the entry again, her heart pounding. "Neurological damage," Marcus says quietly. "What does that mean?" "Diphtheria can affect the nervous system," Eleanor says. "Paralysis, seizures, brain damage. If Clara survived the illness but was left with permanent disabilities, her father—" She stops, the realization hitting her like a punch. "Her father didn't want her back," Eleanor whispers. "He didn't want a damaged child, so he told everyone she was dead. Marcus stares at her, horrified. Eleanor flips forward, searching for Clara's discharge or death record. She finds nothing. The entries for Clara simply stop. She looks up at Leonard. "Is there a list of burials? A cemetery log?" Leonard nods. He retrieves another ledger, this one even older, its pages brown and brittle. He opens it to a section labeled Potter's Field, 1903. Eleanor scans the names. Most entries list only a number and a date. No names, no ages, just numbers. Then she sees it. October 14th, 1903. Plot 47. Unknown child, female, approx. Age 8. Cause of death, pneumonia. Eleanor's breath catches. She looks at Marcus. October 14th. That's 2 weeks before the photograph was taken. Marcus frowns. "You think this is Clara?" "I don't know," Eleanor says, "but if it is, then her mother never found out. She thought Clara was alive. That's why she saw her in the photograph, because she couldn't accept that Clara was gone." Leonard crosses his arms. "The Potter's Field is still here. Most of it is under the park now, but some of the graves were never moved." Eleanor stands, determination hardening in her chest. "Can you show me where plot 47 would have been?" Leonard hesitates. "It's not marked. It's just grass now." "I don't care," Eleanor says. "I need to see it." They walk to the northern end of the island, where the old Potter's Field once stretched across several acres. Most of it has been paved over or turned into parkland, but Leonard leads them to a small fenced-off area near the water. A sign reads, "Historical Burial Ground. Do not disturb." Eleanor steps through the gate. The ground is uneven, overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. There are no headstones, no markers, just earth. She kneels in the center of the field, her fingers digging into the soil. Somewhere beneath her, in the cold, forgotten ground, a child is buried, a child who might be Clara Mae Whitfield. Marcus stands behind her, his voice soft. "What are you going to do?" Eleanor doesn't answer. She pulls out her phone and dials a number. A woman answers. "Dr. Sarah Lynn? This is Dr. Eleanor Price from Greenwood Cemetery. I need your help with an exhumation." Marcus's eyes widen. "Eleanor." "I'm not letting her stay lost," Eleanor says, her voice fierce. "Not anymore." 3 weeks later, Eleanor stands in the cold morning air, watching as a team of forensic archaeologists carefully excavates plot 47. The dig is small, precise. They work slowly, brushing away layers of dirt with delicate tools. Dr. Sarah Lynn kneels beside the grave, her gloved hands sifting through the soil. Then she stops. "I've got something." Eleanor's heart pounds. She steps closer. Sarah lifts a small, fragile object from the earth, a bone, tiny, white, a child's rib. "There's more," Sarah says quietly. She continues digging, and slowly the skeleton emerges. A small skull, a fragile spine, bones no bigger than twigs. Eleanor kneels beside the grave, tears streaming down her face. She reaches out, her fingers hovering over the skull. "Clara," she whispers. Sarah looks up. "We'll need to run DNA tests to confirm identity, but based on the age and condition of the remains, this is consistent with a child who died around 1903. Eleanor nods, unable to speak. They carefully lift the remains and place them in a sterile container. Eleanor watches, her chest tight. After 121 years, Clara Mae Whitfield has finally been found. But the question remains, how will Eleanor prove this is Clara, and what will she do with the truth once she has it? The DNA results arrive 6 weeks later, on a grey December morning. Eleanor sits in her office at Greenwood, staring at the sealed envelope on her desk. Marcus stands beside her, silent. She opens it with trembling hands. The report is dense, technical, filled with charts and genetic markers. But the conclusion is clear. Mitochondrial DNA analysis confirms a maternal lineage match between the remains recovered from Plot 47, Randall's Island, and a living descendant of Eleanor Whitfield. Probability of kinship 99.7%. Eleanor's breath catches. She looks up at Marcus, her voice barely a whisper. "It's her. It's Clara." Marcus exhales slowly. "So what now?" Eleanor sets the report down and picks up the photograph, the one taken in 1903, the one that started everything. She stares at the smiling face of Clara Mae Whitfield, half hidden behind the obelisk, forever frozen in time. Now, Eleanor says, we bring her home. The reburial ceremony takes place on a cold January afternoon. The sky is heavy with clouds, and a light snow falls over Greenwood Cemetery. A small crowd gathers at the Whitfield family plot: historians, archivists, descendants of the Whitfield family, and members of the press. Eleanor stands at the edge of the grave, watching as the small wooden casket is lowered into the ground beside the obelisk. Inside are the fragile remains of Clara Mae Whitfield, finally returned to the place she should have been buried 121 years ago. A priest speaks a few words, something about peace, about rest, about justice delayed, but not denied. Eleanor barely hears him. Her mind is elsewhere, lost in the past. She thinks of Eleanor Whitfield, the mother who refused to stop looking, the woman who saw her daughter in a photograph and believed it was a sign, a message, a promise that Clara was still out there somewhere. She was right. After the ceremony, Eleanor returns to her office. She pulls out Eleanor Whitfield's journal one last time and flips to the final entry. December 1st, 1903. I know Clara is out there somewhere, waiting for me to find her, and I will, even if it takes the rest of my life. Eleanor runs her fingers over the faded ink. Then she picks up a pen and writes beneath the entry, January 15th, 2025. You were right, Eleanor, she was waiting. And now, finally, she is home. But Eleanor isn't finished. There's one more piece of the story that needs to be told. She spends the next 3 months researching Jonathan Whitfield. She digs through financial records, business correspondence, personal letters, and slowly, a darker picture emerges. Jonathan Whitfield was not a grieving father. He was a man obsessed with reputation, with status, with the appearance of a perfect family. When Clara contracted diphtheria and survived with neurological damage, he saw her not as a daughter but as a problem, a burden, a stain on the family name. Eleanor finds a letter Jonathan wrote to Dr. Harrison, the family physician, dated July 10, 1903. Dr. Harrison, I appreciate your efforts to save my daughter, but it is clear that Clara will never recover fully. Her condition is an embarrassment to this family, and I cannot allow her to return home in this state. I have arranged for her transfer to Randall's Island, where she will receive the care she requires. I trust you will assist me in ensuring that this matter is handled discreetly. The family will be told that Clara has passed away. A memorial service will be held. You will provide the necessary documentation. Eleanor's hands shake as she reads. Jonathan didn't just abandon his daughter. He erased her. He paid doctors to lie, falsified records, and staged a death that never happened. Then, when Eleanor Whitfield tried to find Clara, he silenced her. He destroyed pages from her journal, intercepted letters from the private investigator, and locked her away in grief until she stopped asking questions. Eleanor finds one final letter, dated December 15, 1903, written by Jonathan to Albert Finch, the private investigator Eleanor Whitfield had hired. Mr. Finch, I am aware of your inquiries regarding my daughter Clara. I am writing to inform you that your services are no longer required. I have taken steps to ensure that this matter is resolved. If you continue to pursue this investigation, I will have no choice but to take legal action. I trust you understand. Eleanor sits back, fury burning in her chest. Jonathan Whitfield destroyed 2 lives, Clara's and his wife's, and he did it to protect his pride. She knows what she has to do. Eleanor publishes her findings in a detailed report, which is picked up by national news outlets. The story of Clara Mae Whitfield spreads across the country, a child abandoned by her father, buried in an unmarked grave, and forgotten for over a century. Public outrage is swift. Historians call for a re-examination of similar cases from the early 1900s, when families routinely institutionalized disabled children to avoid scandal. Activists demand that asylum's records be opened and studied. Descendants of the Whitfield family issue a formal apology, condemning Jonathan's actions and honoring Clara's memory. But for Eleanor, the most important moment comes 3 months later, when she returns to Greenwood Cemetery, for the dedication of Clara's new headstone. The stone is simple, white marble, engraved with Clara's name, her birth and death dates, and a single line, Clara Mae Whitfield, 1895-1903. Found at last. Eleanor kneels beside the grave, placing a bouquet of white roses on the freshly turned earth. The cemetery is quiet, peaceful. The wind rustles the leaves of the nearby trees. "You're not forgotten anymore," Eleanor whispers. "You never will be." She stands and walks back toward the chapel. Marcus is waiting for her at the gate. "You did it," he says. Eleanor nods, but she doesn't smile. "I didn't do it alone. Clara's mother never stopped looking. She knew the truth, even when everyone told her she was wrong." Marcus is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "What about the photograph, the one that started all this?" Eleanor pulls it from her bag and looks at it, one last time. The 7 faces staring back at her. The smiling girl behind the obelisk. "It was a double exposure," Eleanor says. The photographer took Clara's portrait weeks earlier, probably when she was still alive, before she was sent to Randall's island. He accidentally used the same plate for the family photograph. That's why she appears translucent, why the emulsion is irregular. It was a mistake. But Eleanor Whitfield saw it as a sign, Marcus says. "She did," Eleanor agrees, "and maybe, in a way, it was. Maybe that photograph was the only reason Clara was ever found, because her mother refused to believe she was gone." Eleanor folds the photograph carefully and tucks it back into her bag. Then she looks out across the cemetery, at the endless rows of headstones, at the stories buried beneath the earth. "How many other Claras are out there?" she asks quietly. "How many other children were erased? Forgotten, buried without names?" Marcus doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. Eleanor takes a deep breath and starts walking. There are other mysteries waiting, other stories that need to be told, other lives that deserve to be remembered, and she's not going to stop looking. Because if Eleanor Whitfield taught her anything, it's this. Some people refuse to be forgotten, and some truths refuse to stay buried. 3 years later, Eleanor stands in front of a packed auditorium at Columbia University. The room is filled with historians, genealogists, journalists, and descendants of families touched by similar tragedies. On the screen behind her, Clara Mae Whitfield's photograph glows, the smiling girl in the white dress, no longer a mystery, but a symbol. "Clara's story changed everything," Eleanor begins, her voice steady. "Not just for me, but for hundreds of families who never knew what happened to their children." The Clara Mae Whitfield Foundation was established 6 months after her reburial. Funded by donations and grants, the Foundation's mission is simple: to identify, document, and honor the thousands of children who were institutionalized, abandoned, and erased from history in the early 20th century. Eleanor clicks to the next slide. A map of New York appears, dotted with red markers. These are the locations of asylums, hospitals, and institutions that operated between 1890 and 1930. We've identified over 40 facilities that accepted children with disabilities, chronic illnesses, or behavioral issues. Most of these children were never returned to their families. Many died without proper burial records. Their names were lost. She pauses, letting the weight of the words settle over the audience. But we're finding them, one by one. The screen changes to show a grid of photographs, children's faces, restored from old records, newspapers, and family albums. Some are smiling, others stare blankly at the camera, their eyes hollow with fear or resignation. In the past 3 years, we've identified 127 children who were institutionalized and buried in unmarked graves. 17 of them have been exhumed and reburied with their families. 23 have been given proper headstones in the Potter's Fields, where they were originally laid to rest, and for the others, we're still searching. Eleanor clicks again. The image shifts to Greenwood Cemetery. Clara's headstone stands in the center, surrounded by flowers. Clara's grave has become a place of remembrance. Families from all over the country come to visit, to leave flowers, to say the names of children who were forgotten, because Clara isn't just one child anymore. She represents all of them. The audience is silent. Eleanor can see tears on some faces. I've received hundreds of letters, Eleanor continues, from people who discovered that their great-grandmother had a sibling no one ever mentioned. From families who found census records listing a child who suddenly disappeared. From descendants of doctors, nurses, and administrators who worked in these institutions and wanted to know the truth. She pauses, her voice softening. One woman wrote to me last month. Her name is Margaret Lindstrom. She's 86 years old. She told me that when she was a child, her mother used to cry on certain nights, and Margaret never knew why. After reading about Clara, she searched her mother's belongings and found a hidden box of letters to a brother named Thomas, who was sent to an asylum in 1911 when he was 6 years old. Thomas had epilepsy. Her mother visited him once and was told he died 3 months later, but there was no death certificate, no grave. Eleanor's throat tightens. We found Thomas. He's buried in a potter's field in Staten Island. Margaret will see her uncle's grave for the first time next month. The auditorium erupts in quiet applause. Eleanor nods, acknowledging it, but she doesn't smile. This work isn't easy, she says. It's painful. It forces us to confront the darkest parts of our history, the ways we devalued human life, the ways we discarded people who didn't fit into society's expectations. But it's necessary, because these children deserve to be remembered. They deserve to have their names spoken. They deserve justice. Eleanor clicks to the final slide. A quote appears on the screen, written in Eleanor Whitfield's handwriting taken from her journal. I know Clara is out there somewhere waiting for me to find her, and I will, even if it takes the rest of my life. Eleanor Whitfield never stopped looking, Eleanor says, and neither will we. 6 months later. Eleanor returns to Greenwood Cemetery on a cool spring morning. The trees are in bloom, their branches heavy with white and pink blossoms. The cemetery is quiet, peaceful. She walks the familiar path to the Whitfield family plot. Clara's grave is covered in fresh flowers, roses, lilies, daisies. There are small tokens too, a child's drawing, a handwritten note, a worn teddy bear. People leave them here, offerings to a little girl they never knew but will never forget. Eleanor kneels beside the headstone and places her hand on the cool marble. I thought I was just restoring old photographs, she says softly. But you changed my life, Clara. You showed me what matters. She sits in the grass, her back against the obelisk, and pulls out Eleanor Whitfield's journal. She's read it 100 times, but it never gets easier. The grief, the determination, the love that refused to be silenced. Eleanor opens her laptop and checks her email. Another message from a descendant, another child's name, another family searching for answers. She replies, I'll help you. We'll find them. Because that's what Eleanor does now. It's her life's work, her purpose to find the lost, to honor the forgotten, to make sure that what happened to Clara Mae Whitfield never happens again. She closes her laptop and looks out across the cemetery. The sun breaks through the clouds, casting golden light over the headstones. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sings. You're not alone anymore, Eleanor whispers. None of them are. She stands, brushes the grass from her jeans, and walks back toward the chapel. There's work to do. There are more names to find, more stories to tell, and Eleanor Whitfield's journal will guide her every step of the way, because some truths refuse to stay buried, and some love never dies.